At Christmas, my sister got a brand new car with a red bow on top. I got a ceramic piggy bank and $12. Before we dive into the story, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I'm always curious to see how far these stories reach. Now let's get into it. That was the moment I realized, love in my family was something you had to earn, and I had already lost. Everyone laughed and cheered as Tess squealed, hugging our parents, tears in her eyes. My mom's phone was out, recording every second. "Our baby deserves it," she said proudly. Then Dad turned to me, half smiling. "And for you, Mara, something to start saving." He handed me the tiny pink piggy bank and an envelope with 12 crisp dollars inside. Everyone chuckled like it was a joke. I laughed too, but my throat burned. For years I told myself they didn't mean it. That being the responsible one mattered more than being the favorite. I worked 2 jobs, helped pay bills, and never complained. Tess, on the other hand, was the sunshine of the house. Lazy, charming, endlessly adored. When Mom said, "You know we love you both equally," I stopped believing her a long time ago. As Tess revved her new car in the driveway, the sound echoed like mockery. She called out, "Don't be jealous, sis. Maybe next year you'll get a real car." Everyone laughed again. I smiled tight, nodding, but inside something shifted. Not anger exactly, just a quiet, sharp realization that I didn't belong there anymore. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat by the window holding that stupid piggy bank. The moonlight hit its shiny ceramic surface and I saw my reflection. Tired, invisible, small. I thought about the rent I'd helped with, the groceries I bought, the birthdays I skipped celebrating because I was working overtime. And for what? A joke, gift, and a reminder of my place. When Tess's laughter echoed from her room, I felt something break in me. Not a clean snap, but a slow, deliberate tear. I didn't know it yet, but that moment was the start of something else. Something cold, steady, and quietly powerful. My family had just taught me how to stop caring. And that was the greatest gift of all. Growing up, I learned early that some kids are born into the spotlight and others are told to hold it steady. Tess was our sunshine, Mom's favorite word for her. I was responsible, which really meant invisible. She got the bigger room, the new clothes, the louder applause. I got quiet nods and phrases like, "We're proud of you, sweetheart, but your sister just has something special." I remember one night in high school when Dad promised to start a college fund for me. I held on to that hope like a lifeline. A year later, I overheard Mom on the phone saying they'd use that money to pay for Tess's private dance lessons. "She needs opportunities," she said. "Mara will understand, she's practical." I did understand, but it didn't make it hurt any less. When Dad got sick during my senior year, Tess disappeared to parties while I stayed home to help him eat, to drive him to his appointments, to hold his hand when the pain got bad. Mom called me her rock. But even rocks break. I watched Tess breeze in hours later, smelling like cheap perfume and laughter, hugging Dad as if she hadn't just missed another treatment day. They still smiled at her like she hung the stars. By the time we were adults, the pattern was carved deep. Tess moved into a nice apartment she couldn't afford, and when she couldn't make rent, I quietly sent her the money. She didn't even say thank you. Just a text, "Got it. You're a lifesaver." Like it was nothing. That's when the resentment hardened into something solid. I realized it wasn't about the money or the rooms or the gifts. It was about the way love was measured in our house. Loudness, charm, and neediness got rewarded. Quiet strength got ignored. Every favor I did, every apology I swallowed only built the walls higher between us. Tess still called me the serious one, laughing like it was a compliment. But I could feel the distance growing, cold and steady. Every memory of her dancing in the spotlight replayed in my mind, and behind her smile I saw the truth. I'd never been second by accident. I was placed there on purpose. A week after Christmas, I came home from work to find Tess standing in the driveway, crying over a long scratch down her shiny new car. Mom was rubbing her back, whispering, "It's okay, baby, it's just paint." Dad paced around, inspecting the damage like it was a family emergency. Then Mom turned to me and said the words that froze me solid. "Mara, you'll help cover the repair, right? Tess can't afford this right now." For a second I thought I'd misheard. I was still paying off my own student debt, still stretching every paycheck just to get by. And now they wanted me to fix the mistake she made? My voice came out calm, almost too calm. "No. I'm not paying for it." The silence that followed was heavier than anything I'd ever felt. Mom blinked, stunned. Dad's jaw clenched. Tess's lip trembled as she whimpered, "Wow, you don't even care?" That did it. Years of swallowing my pride, years of doing everything right. It all cracked open at once. Mom's tone turned sharp. "Don't talk back to us, Mara. We've done everything for you." I laughed, bitter and low. "Everything? You gave her a car and gave me $12. Dad snapped, "Don't be ungrateful. Family helps family." "Then maybe family should help themselves for once," I shot back. Tess started crying louder, saying I'd always been jealous, that I loved to play the victim. The sound was unbearable. Mom sided with her instantly, wrapping her arms around Tess and glaring at me like I was the problem. For the first time I didn't back down. I didn't explain. I didn't apologize. I just stood there, heart pounding, realizing this was it, the moment everything changed. I went upstairs, packed a suitcase and grabbed the envelope with my savings. The house felt smaller than ever, stuffed with years of words I'd never said. On my way out, Mom asked, "Where do you think you're going?" "Somewhere I can breathe," I said quietly, closing the door behind me. The cold air hit my face like freedom. No plans, no place to go. Just me, a single bag and the sound of my own footsteps fading down the street. For the first time I wasn't running away. I was leaving for good. The studio I found wasn't much. Just one window, a creaky radiator and walls thin enough to hear the neighbor's TV. But when I closed the door that first night, the silence felt different. It wasn't empty. It was mine. No one yelling, no one sighing at me for existing. Just the hum of my own breathing and the promise that I could finally start over. Days blurred into weeks. I picked up extra shifts at the hardware store where I'd worked part-time before. The work was steady, the pay enough to cover rent and leave a few dollars to save each month. I'd come home exhausted but strangely peaceful. I didn't have much. An air mattress, a thrifted lamp, a small plant on the windowsill. But it was enough to feel alive again. Eli joined the store around that time. He had a quiet way about him, the kind of humor that slipped out unexpectedly and made even the longest shifts lighter. He never treated me like I was fragile or broken, just human. When I dropped a box of bolts one afternoon, he knelt to help, muttering, "Gravity's an equal opportunity jerk." I laughed for the first time in weeks. We started sharing coffee breaks, small talks that stretched into long conversations about nothing and everything. He didn't pry and I didn't offer much. But in his silence there was understanding, a respect I'd never known before. As my savings grew, so did a small sense of confidence. I began sketching out ideas for a side business, something I could build for myself one day. It felt strange to dream again, like testing muscles I hadn't used in years. Still, whenever I drove home from work and passed the old neighborhood, my chest tightened. Through the windshield I'd sometimes glimpse the familiar house. The porch light glowing, the driveway still holding that same car. I could almost hear Tess's laugh echoing in my head. See that smirk as she revved the engine, proud and untouchable. I'd grip the steering wheel and force myself to look forward. Freedom had its price. Loneliness, uncertainty, long nights staring at the ceiling. But it also came with something I'd never had before. Peace. And with each paycheck, each quiet morning, I felt that peace growing stronger than the hurt I left behind. 2 years had passed since I walked out with nothing but a suitcase and my savings, and life had taken turns I never could have predicted. I heard through mutual friends that Tess had floundered badly. She left college halfway through, her grades in shambles, and had one too many nights out behind the wheel. The same car she once flaunted gleamed with dents and scratches, a constant reminder of recklessness rewarded. Credit cards piled up, bills went unpaid, and yet my parents quietly scrambled to cover the fallout. I heard rumors they had refinanced the house, taking on more debt so she could stay afloat. All the while I had been quietly building something of my own, learning that the world didn't owe me anything, but persistence paid in ways family never had. Then came the announcement I never expected. Tess was engaged. To Jonah, Eli's older brother. The news hit like a thunderclap, both bitter and ironic. The same family who had elevated her every misstep would now celebrate her as if nothing had gone wrong. At the first dinner after the engagement news, the atmosphere was suffocating. Tess grinned from across the table, holding Jonah's hand like it was a trophy. She talked about wedding plans, venues, dresses, as if she hadn't been a disaster for the last 2 years. My parents nodded along, eyes full of pride, completely blind to the chaos that had preceded it. I kept my tone neutral, my smile polite, but every word I spoke carried a quiet edge. I realized that being cordial no longer mattered. They had spent years rewarding charm and punishing responsibility. I'd given them courtesy and it had gone unnoticed. That night I made a decision. I wouldn't play along anymore. Politeness was a currency they didn't respect. From now on, every interaction, every conversation would remind them, subtly surely, that I had found my own strength, my own path, and that their favoritism and misplaced pride no longer held power over me. The tables had shifted. The once golden child stumbled publicly, while I remained composed, steady, unshaken. And in that calm I discovered a satisfaction that they would never understand. One afternoon Jonah walked into the store where I worked, looking tired and worn in a way that made my chest tighten. He didn't come for anything I sold, he just needed someone to talk to. He sank into a chair near the counter, hands fidgeting, and quietly admitted the truth. Tess had been seeing someone else while pretending to be faithful. His voice was low, filled with disbelief, hurt spilling over every word. He didn't know who else to confide in. I listened, nodding, careful not to betray my own emotions. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years I had been ignored, sidelined, dismissed. And now this secret, this crack in Tess's perfect facade, was staring me in the face. I didn't react immediately. There was no rush. Instead I began quietly gathering evidence. Text she couldn't delete fast enough, receipts showing she was somewhere she claimed not to be, timestamps proving her lies. Every little detail, every contradiction stacked up. I felt a mix of satisfaction and patience. This wasn't about humiliation for the sake of it. It was about the truth finally being seen. Tess had built a life on deception, on charm and manipulation, and now the pieces were all available. I mapped everything out carefully, making sure each bit of evidence was undeniable. I traced the time she told Jonah she was at yoga, only to find photos and messages proving otherwise. Each new discovery reinforced the sense that the universe had given me the moment I had been waiting for, a chance to expose the deceit that mirrored all the betrayal I had endured in silence. Jonah left that day defeated but trusting me, unaware that I wasn't just a confidant. I was the one who could finally make all the hidden truths undeniable. The power wasn't in rushing in, it was in preparation. Patience had always been my advantage and now it was ready to pay off fully. For the first time in years, I felt the pieces of my life and hers align perfectly, like a reckoning had been scheduled, and I was holding the proof that would make it impossible to ignore. The invitation arrived in a neatly folded envelope, the kind my parents used for special occasions. "Come home for Christmas. Let's reconnect," it read. I stared at it for a long moment, remembering every past holiday, every gift, every silent comparison. And then I smiled quietly, almost imperceptibly. I would go. Arriving at the house, I stepped into the familiar warmth, the smell of pine and cinnamon filling the air. The living room gleamed with decorations, laughter bouncing off the walls. Tess flitted around, giddy and radiant, and Jonah stayed close to her, looking proud and completely unaware of the cracks beneath their perfect image. During dinner, the chatter was loud and light, the kind that masks tension with jokes and toasts. I kept my expressions neutral, words measured, appearing polite while my mind catalogued every detail. The sparkling tree, the carefully arranged gifts, the subtle glances exchanged by my parents when they looked at Tess. I had brought my own small offerings, a set of hand-picked candles for Mom, a neat journal for Dad, and a modest scarf for Jonah. Each item wrapped with care, each bow tied with precision. Tess spotted them immediately, her smirk curling into something sharper. "That's it?" she asked, voice laced with amusement. I simply smiled, adjusting the edge of a ribbon and placing them under the tree. Her laughter echoed in my ears, but I didn't shrink. The feeling was strangely familiar, like a ghost of past Christmases. The humiliation that used to accompany my presence had shifted subtly, quietly. This time I had a sense of control, of awareness that I hadn't possessed as a child or a young adult. When Tess and Jonah raised their glasses to announce their engagement dinner, I applauded politely, eyes calm, heart steady. No jealousy, no envy, just the silent knowledge that everything I had endured had positioned me here, aware, prepared, and untouchable. For the first time I felt the upper hand, not from loud confrontation, but from quiet strategy, patience, and foresight. The familiar sting of comparison was still there, but it no longer had the power to wound me. I was present, composed, and ready. The moment came when the pile of presents under the tree had been whittled down to just a few. I handed Tess a small, unassuming box wrapped neatly but perfectly centered. She tilted it in her hands, curiosity flickering across her face, before breaking into a teasing laugh. "What is this?" "My next piggy bank." I let the silence hang for a heartbeat, smiling faintly. "You'll want to see what's on it before you answer that." She raised an eyebrow, puzzled, as I retrieved the USB drive from the box and plugged it into the TV. Immediately the screen came alive. Photos of her in compromising positions, videos capturing conversations and laughter she thought were private, messages revealing lies and hidden meetings. The image of her double life unfolded in full color for everyone to witness. Jonah, standing close by, froze. His face went pale, lips parting, eyes wide with disbelief. The laughter and chatter from earlier evaporated instantly. The room felt impossibly small, every eye locked on Tess, every gasp and whisper a weight pressing down. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide, shock etched deep across her face. Dad, who had often smiled indulgently at her antics, finally looked uneasy, ashamed. He shuffled slightly, caught between anger and realization, unable to defend the facade that had once protected her. Tess stammered, her voice cracking. She tried to explain, to excuse, to laugh it off, but every movement seemed hollow. Her confidence, the one that had dominated so many of our shared memories, evaporated instantly. The perfect illusion was gone, replaced with undeniable proof of betrayal. I stood quietly, calm, letting the images speak for themselves. No yelling, no confrontation, just the truth displayed plainly for everyone. The room remained motionless, the air heavy with the weight of revelation. In that moment, years of hidden resentment and careful observation came together, and I realized how quietly powerful patience could be. For the first time, Tess had nowhere to hide, and the balance had shifted entirely. The silence was deafening, and I felt a steady satisfaction settle deep inside me, warm and absolute. By the time the night ended, the damage was irreversible. Jonah's expression had hardened, disappointment and betrayal etched into every line of his face. He walked out without a word, leaving Tess frozen, staring at the door as it clicked shut. The engagement, once paraded as a triumph, was over before the champagne had even settled. My parents cornered me quietly afterward, pleading, almost desperate. "Please, Mara, just delete the files. Think of the family," Mom whispered, eyes glistening. Dad's voice was taut with frustration. "We never meant for it to go this far." I shook my head, calm and deliberate. "I just wanted to give a fair gift this year," I said, letting each word hang between us. In the days that followed, Tess packed her things, moving out in silence. The house, once filled with her laughter and entitlement, felt suddenly hollow. The imbalance that had defined every holiday, every interaction finally shifted. News of the events spread through friends and neighbors, whispered in awe and curiosity. I became known, quietly, as the one who had revealed the truth, the one who had shifted the scales without fanfare or malice. It was strange, this sudden attention, but I felt no need to boast. Satisfaction had never required applause. With Tess gone, I found space to breathe, to think about the life I wanted without interference. I handed in my notice at the hardware store, trading the steady paycheck for possibility. Eli and I began planning a small venture together, something I could call entirely my own, built on work, creativity, and respect. For the first time, my days belonged solely to me. The routines, the decisions, the successes, they were mine. No one dictating, no one judging, no one assuming my place or worth. Independence was more than freedom. It was validation of all the quiet struggles and careful patience that had brought me here. As I stepped into the small office space we rented, unpacking supplies and arranging the first products, I felt a clarity I'd never known. The weight of old comparisons, of favoritism and expectation lifted. Life was no longer about proving myself to anyone but me. I was finally free, finally in control, finally living on my own terms. Months had passed since everything had settled, and the seasons had shifted quietly around me. One afternoon I found myself behind the wheel, the hum of my own car beneath me, following a familiar route. The streets were lined with the same trees I'd walked under as a child, yet everything felt different. As I turned the corner, the old house came into view. Dust had settled on the windows, the garden slightly overgrown, and in the driveway Tessa's car sat motionless, dented and neglected, a testament to careless choices and forgotten pride. I felt no triumph, no glee, only the clarity of completion. I pulled up to the porch and stepped out, the crisp air brushing my face. From my bag I retrieved the small ceramic piggy bank and $12 bill I had kept, a quiet symbol of the Christmas that had changed everything. I set them gently on the doorstep, arranging them with care, a small nod to the past that had once held me down. For a moment I lingered, staring at the house. Memories flashed, laughter, arguments, silent nights, stolen moments of hope, but there was no longing, no backward glance of regret. I felt only the present, solid and grounded, the freedom I had fought for and earned. Sliding back into my car, I started the engine and pulled away, the tires crunching softly over the gravel. The house grew smaller in the rearview mirror, the abandoned car fading behind me. I didn't glance back again. For the first time, I understood what it meant to truly leave something behind. Not in anger, not in resentment, but with quiet finality. The streets stretched ahead, open and waiting, and I drove forward with the weight of the past lifted, the future entirely my own. Do you think I did the right thing by walking away from my family, or should I have tried to forgive them? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below. And if you want more stories like mine, subscribe and hit the notification bell.